Hello everyone, my name is Adam Smith from Rolling Solo, and in this video we're going to focus on defense dice inside of Too Many Bones Undertow. Your defense stat is the number of defense dice you have available to roll each turn, and they are not exhausted when used. So in this case with Duster, we have the availability to use just one defensive die, which I've just placed here for now. Each defensive die you choose to roll is going to cost you a dex when you're rolling it in battle. So in this particular case, if I choose to roll this die, similar to the attack dice we talked about in that video, it will count against the total dexterity, as dexterity equals the amount of dice I can roll at one time, along with movement, and that's mixed in, and we'll talk more about that later. The total defense dice currently in active slots will reduce available defense die for rolling this turn. So for instance, if I happen to roll this die during one of my defensive reactions or during my turn, in this case I rolled a bone. So when I roll a bone, it basically goes into my backup plan, and when this die goes into the backup plan, it does not count against the availability of the defensive die in the future to roll again. So very similar to how the exhausted dice never takes place on defensive dice. You will never ever have dice taken away from you unless they're in the active slot. So in a situation on another turn where I have one defensive die to roll again based on the stat here, I would roll that die, and if I landed a bone again, I would continue to fill up my backup plan. Again, it doesn't take away from the total number of defensive dice I can roll. So in a subsequent turn, I'd roll again, and at this point now, I finally got my first defensive success. And this is going to give me a great number 2, which is the strongest level you can get on a defensive die. This now will sit in the active area of my slot of my character's mat, and the cool thing about this is it's going to not only sit there to reduce damage that comes in towards Duster, but the downside to that is I'm no longer able to roll defensive dice, as I have one currently in what's called an active slot. So I actually have an active defensive die in play, which means I no longer get to use one die from this total area, and currently that total is only 1, so I'm done rolling defensive dice until this is absorbed through damage. So let's say hypothetically I'm attacked for 3 damage. Duster can actually block or use this active die to block 2 of that damage, and then 1 damage would come through. So if Duster had 3 health, you'd lose a single health off the gear lock and move on. Now this defensive die is out of the active area and is available again in future turns to roll in order to try to place it back in the active area to defend against other attacks. A defensive training attempt requires you to roll your current defense, which is your starting stat, and your stat die. So in this particular case right now, I don't have a stat die, so I'm rolling to increase my defense using a training point that you gain from an encounter, and you can see here I only get to roll 1 die. So I'd be rolling hoping not to hit any bones. I didn't, so this is a successful training attempt, and so because of that, I get to go ahead and take a stat die and just put, starting with a 1, now my total defense dice I can roll is 2 going forward, or up to 2. So if I chose to spend another training point in the future, I'd be rolling 2 defensive dice in order to try to be successful. And in this case, again, I was successful, so this would increment another time. Let's say I continue doing this, so now I'm rolling 3 and I'm training again in a future turn, and I land a bone like this. What ends up happening with a defensive training attempt is you're allowed to re-roll your bones 1 more time. And if you go ahead and roll this and don't land another bone, you're successful. Otherwise, it's a failure. So it gives you a little bit of leeway and you have a little bit better of a chance of succeeding with defense dice. So I rolled a bone twice in a row. That means that this increase or training attempt for my defensive stat was a failure, and so because of that, I cannot spend the training point on this defense, and I have to spend it elsewhere, whether through skills, dexterity, attack, health,